Perfect. Well, good evening, everybody. Thank you for joining us for this online public scoping meeting. If you wouldn't mind going ahead, we're just going to pull up the presentation. Okay, so this is the online public scoping meeting for the Hemphill Diversion Structure Project Environmental Impact Report. I'm Tanya Tabuki-Herrera, Project Manager for this particular project. Also in the room is Doug Roderick, Engineering Manager. We have also online from eCorp, Chris Babenfeld, Mike Martin, and Rick Hansen. At this point, I'd like to turn it over to Chris, and Chris, you can take it away.
All right, thank you, Tanya. Hi, my name is Chris Stavenfeld. I'm with eCorp Consulting, and we have been retained by NID to prepare the environmental impact report for the project. I'm going to be providing a little overview of the project prior to accepting comments. First of all, I want to just go over the purpose of the meeting. We're going to provide some background information to you on the purpose and need for the project. We're going to describe the proposed project alternatives that are being considered in the environmental impact report. Provide a little explanation of the environmental review process as proposed for this project. And then finally, the main purpose of the meeting, which is to solicit input from the public on the scope and content of the environmental review document. You can go ahead and take to the next one. Here's an overview of the environmental review process as proposed. As you can see, we circulated a notice of preparation initial study on September 3rd. I wanted to note that the purpose of the initial study is to help focus the EIR on critical issues. So please do look through the initial study, and if you have any thoughts, suggestions on content, you can use that as a guide. This is obviously the public scoping meeting today, the 21st of September. We're going to be closing the NOP comment period on October 5th, 2020. We have a target date for release of the draft EIR for public review and comment of April of 2021. And then following that, we will have a public meeting during the draft EIR comment period. So there'll be another opportunity for the public to comment. And then obviously during that review period, you'll be able to provide written comments as well. Following the end of the comment period, we will prepare written responses to comments on the draft EIR and prepare a final EIR, which will then be provided to NID for consideration of certification of the final EIR and the attached mitigation monitoring reporting plan, and make recommendations and take action on a preferred alternative. You can go to the next. All right. So as I just indicated, we have opportunity today to comment. You can raise your hand, use the raise your hand function, or you can press *9 to notify us that you want to provide a comment. We would strongly encourage you to provide written comments as well. We will be recording this session, so we'll be able to summarize all comments received, but it's always helpful. We could also get direct written comments from you. At the end of this presentation, we'll provide you with an email address and a mailing address where you can send your comments by October 5th. Go ahead and move on. So first of all, just a general project location. I think many of the people on this are probably familiar with the project, but the Hemphill diversion is located on Auburn Ravine, just northeast of the city of Lincoln, as shown on this aerial. The structure diverts water from Auburn Ravine into the Hemphill Canal, which is located south of the ravine, which is then delivered to NID raw water customers in the city of Lincoln and adjacent to the city of Lincoln. A little background on the project. The Hemphill diversion structure has been operated by NID since 1933. The diversion is a concrete structure approximately 8 feet high with an approximate 40-foot long concrete apron extending downstream. During the irrigation season, which is typically mid-April through mid-October, the district puts in 3-foot flashboards on top of the structure to divert flow into Hemphill Canal. which is located just upstream of the diversion structure along the south bank of Auburn Ravine. Auburn Ravine, upstream of Hemphill diversion, is a salmon and steelhead habitat stream, and the structure has been identified as a barrier to fish passage. The district proposes this project specifically to eliminate this barrier by either removing the structure or constructing a fish passage facility around the structure. As we will go into more detail, we have NID is considering 4 alternatives to achieve this goal. We're going to go into a little bit more detail about the project alternatives. The 4 alternatives that are being considered include a riverbank infiltration gallery alternative, a fish passage alternative, a pipeline alternative, and abandonment of the Hemphill Canal alternative. It's worth noting that alternatives 1, 3, and 4 include removal of the diversion. Alternative 2 includes modification of the diversion. The alternatives vary as far as construction attributes and areas of potential disturbance. All these alternatives are designed to allow for fish passage beyond the Hemphill diversion structure on Auburn Ravine. We go to the next one. So the first alternative is the riverbank infiltration gallery alternative. The riverbank infiltration alternative would remove the Hemphill diversion and construct an infiltration gallery, which would be subsurface, obviously, with the north or south bank of Auburn Ravine to facilitate continued water deliveries to Hemphill. If it was selected to be on the north bank, there would be a need to extend a pipeline across the ravine, just for your edification. The gallery is anticipated to be approximately 75 feet downstream of the existing diversion structure. Under this alternative, flows in Auburn Ravine would stay similar to undercurrent conditions. I think the next is a graphic showing, I guess, no. Oh, it's after alternative 2, sorry about that. So alternative 2 is the fish passage alternative. This alternative would install a fish ladder within Auburn Ravine. There was a feasibility analysis of this approach completed back in 2009 by Placer County. They considered 4 alternatives. Of the 4 alternatives, 2 were included year-round passage for fish through either a bypass or a 2-stage fish ladder. Because Auburn Ravine is identified as both a fall run salmon and steelhead stream, selection of one of the 2 year-round passages would improve anadromous fish migration conditions. The 2-stage fish ladder is more desirable as it does not significantly increase the footprint of NID's operations. And due to the existing condition of the diversion, it is possible that the existing diversion may need replacement or modification to actually construct a viable fish ladder facility. The project team has been engaged to do additional feasibility analysis of the fish ladder alternative to help better inform the project description and to help us in the analysis in the EIR. So that is an ongoing process with a sub-consultant to ECOR. NHC is doing that work. You can go to the next. This shows the general area of potential effect with both of these alternatives. You can see approximate location of the infiltration gallery and the approximate location of the fish ladder. We encompassed a fair area around the diversion to allow for staging and access and any other work that might need to be done. So we are doing technical studies, evaluating resource issues within this area of potential effect to make sure that we have complete coverage to support the EIR. You can go on to the next slide. The third alternative is a pipeline alternative. This alternative would remove the existing diversion structure and construct an underground pipeline that would extend from existing NID facilities on Gold Hill Road to the Hemphill Canal. This alternative includes installation of a 24-inch raw water pipeline in Fruitvale Road, Fowler Road, and Virginiatown Road right-of-ways. They'll be in the right-of-way. This alternative would also construct an above-ground stream crossing downstream and west of the existing diversion. Under this alternative, water would be diverted at NID's Placer Yard instead of the Hemphill diversion. resulting in decreased flows in Auburn Ravine from the Gold Hill to the Hemphill diversion during the irrigation system. That will be considered as part of the environmental analysis. We go on. This is a graphic showing the alignment of the pipeline. The other areas shown are potential staging areas. As part of the analysis, at this point, we're doing kind of a constraints level evaluation of all the potential staging areas to identify preferred ones that have fewer resource issues related to them. And that will be part of the environmental document. Our environmental analysis, we're not doing site visits on these facilities, but we're doing desktop review and also doing from the road right away, getting a look at all the staging areas so we can determine which ones may have problems. You can go ahead. The fourth alternative is abandonment of the Hemphill Canal alternative. This alternative would remove the Hemphill diversion structure and decommission Hemphill Canal. This alternative would fill the canal with soil through the leveling of existing berms and the importing of soil to level out the canal area if fill is requested by adjacent property owners. The fill would extend from Auburn Ravine to SR 193. South of SR 193, the canal is undergrounded, so there would be no need for alterations to the canal as currently configured. During the preparation of the draft EIR, we will be looking at alternatives for continuing to provide raw water delivery to this area. We're still in the process of determining alternatives that can be viable, but they will be included in the EIR. Additionally, the impacts of the reduced flows in Auburn Ravine, similar to the other alternative, the pipeline alternative, during the irrigation system will be evaluated as part of this alternative. All right, you can go on. So this shows the canal, and all four alternatives obviously have impacts in the area of the diversion. So the area potential effect for all four alternatives includes that larger area around the diversion and will be included in the analysis. All right. Just a quick overview of key issues. Construction-related impacts. Implementing any of these alternatives are going to have impacts to air quality, cultural resources, biological resources, paleontological resources, greenhouse gas emissions, noise, and tribal resources. So we are moving forward with a lot of technical work at the moment to be able to inform those analysis in the document. Long-term impacts, depending on which alternative is selected, are obviously include biological resource impacts within Auburn Ravine itself, based on changes in flow and operations, hydrology and water quality issues as well, and then obviously water supply are some of the key issues that will be evaluated in depth in the EIR. You can go to the next one. This provides the mailing address if you'd like to draft a letter and send it in via mail. You can send it to this email or to this mail address, and then we also have an email address that you can send comments to as well. At the end of the comment period, we'll be compiling all of the comments. The project team will be reviewing the comments to make sure that our analysis is responsive to any concerns raised by the public or agencies as part of the process. And the EIR will include a summary of public scoping that was completed in support of the environmental document. As I noted earlier, you can raise your hand or press *9 if you'd like to provide us with a comment during the call. We're not intending to have a dialogue necessarily about the project, but we are willing to be happy to answer any clarification questions that might come up during the conversation. And with that, I'll put it back over to the folks over there.
Okay. We do. We have a few attendees. So what we'll do is we will call on you. If you have a question or comment, please use the raise your hand function or *9.
Someone was doing Q&A, but we're not using that function.
We haven't been. Okay, so again, if anybody has a question, please feel free to, or comment, please feel free to raise your hand, either raise your hand function or *9. Okay. Yes, so we're going to unmute you, Chris.
I'm asking him to unmute. Chris, you?
Chris Schutz.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Can you hear
Hi.
me?
Yes.
A couple of things. The fish passage alternative number 2 does not appear to have a fish screen included as part of it. That, I think, would not meet agency criteria and also would not really meet the overall purpose. So I would ask that you modify the alternative number 2 to include a screen or something that functionally does the same thing. I believe that the technical committees working on this looked at a number of options, and I would recommend that you evaluate some of those and see what all people recommended or discussed in that context. Also, it seems to me that it may be appropriate to have more than one fish passage alternative or some sub-alternatives. There may be several different designs. I'm not sure what the best CEQA way to go about doing that might be, but it does seem like limiting it to one alternative might unnecessarily limit the options and then make you have to back up. I think that having gone through this and having watched this evolve for many years, it would be in everyone's interests to try to get this complete the first time and make sure that whatever CEQA documentation you have covers a range of options, that one of which is going to be feasible for you all to construct. One other comment I think that is important is that when you're looking at the impacts of alternative 3, the pipeline, it's important to consider the hydrology impacts, assuming not only that the existing use of the Auburn Ravine for water conveyance by Placer County Water Agency continues, but in the event that it doesn't, that might have much more significant impacts. It's my understanding, and I may be incorrect, that NID doesn't have customers downstream of Hemphill. And so if the diversion for Hemphill were discontinued and Placer County Water Agency were to find that it was no longer economic or there was no longer demand for water downstream, the impacts would be very different than they are under the current delivery regimen that exists today. That's all I have for now. I may have some other things as the discussion comes up. Thanks for the opportunity to talk.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chris.
Okay, so, yes, James Hoffler, we're going to unmute you now. Hi, Jim, if you can unmute.
Okay. You have to unmute me and I have to unmute me too. Okay, understood.
Yes.
So regarding the riverbank infiltration gallery as it was described, has it been decided that in fact the infiltration gallery would be truly in the riverbank? The reason I ask that is that in the documentation, in the initial study, the diagram of the infiltration gallery shows it extending about halfway into the stream bed, halfway across the stream bed.
So it will be, the majority of it will be featured within the bank, but there is some improvements within the stream bed that would have to be made just as shown on that diagram, yes.
Okay. All right, thank you. That was my first question. I may have others later on, but I'll let somebody else get in there.
Thank you.
Let's have her hand up. She might be asking a question about the meeting, so I guess.
What
Next.
are the rules
Yeah, I'm not
regarding that?
sorry, it's a public meeting.
It is a public meeting, but I also see that Laura is online.
I know.
Ricky, we might be in a little bit of an awkward situation. I'm not sure if there's any other board members online aside from Laura.
Yeah, but this, thing too. Is it a question about viewing participants?
Was it the question that you typed, Chris, about being able to view participants?
Yes, that was one question. The other one was, I just didn't understand how a canal on option 4 allows for fish passage. And so I just would like that explained to me. That's all. And if that's not an appropriate question at this time, that's cool. But why aren't we able to see the participants?
So with regard
For a
to,
webinar, so the webinar, you can't see the participants.
could you hear Chris's answer, Ricky?
The webinar is not a meeting, so you don't see all names.
This is a different process than I thought it was going to be. Okay.
So, and then your question with alternative 4, could you repeat that question, please?
I just didn't understand how a canal that goes around, as it was described, would actually, where would the fish go? Would they go in the canal? Or, I mean, I don't understand how that achieves the goal of fish passage.
So with the alternative 4, we would remove the diversion structure. So that would meet the goal for the fish passage. So with alternative 4, though, we would fill in the canal. So there would be no water going down Hemphill Canal, and service would either be from Auburn Ravine through private pump accounts, or we would look at other potential avenues to make sure that our existing customers have some sort of raw water service.
So again, what happens to the fish in that?
They would be within the ravine, within Auburn Ravine Natural. So the barrier, the Hemphill diversion would be removed in that alternative.
Yes.
So that would open up that section of Auburn Ravine Natural for fish passage.
Okay, but then you're talking about NID would take its water, right? And so we would not be putting water in the ravine. The water would be coming from whatever natural sources. Is that what I'm understanding?
We would, depending on if there's individual pump accounts, we would potentially no longer be importing water into Auburn Ravine Natural in order to feed Hemphill Canal, because Hemphill Canal would no longer exist.
I see. Okay, thank you. I'll step back. You can mute me. I'm just listening. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, yes, I can. So Steve Hubbard, we're going to unmute you next.
Okay, can you hear me okay?
We can.
Okay, great. I'd just like to follow up on one of Chris's statements, and that is with the suggestion that as you look at alternatives for number 2 in the actual structure that a fish ladder might take, that you might take a look at the project that NID completed in 2012 in Lincoln at the Lincoln Gauging Station. It was a fish passage, and it's not mentioned in the document at all, but it's something that I would suggest you might take a look at to see if it has any bearing at all on your plans for the Hemphill project.
Okay. Do you have an additional comment?
No, that's thanks.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we're going to move to a phone number. It's ending 4715. We're unmuting you now. Can you please unmute?
Star 6 to unmute.
You have to press star 6 to unmute if you're on your phone. phone number ending 4715.
Press star 6 to unmute.
You can press
Ron
star.
Otto?
Oh, hi. Hi there. I'm sorry. Say your name one more time, please.
Yes, this is Ron Otto calling.
Hi, Ron.
Hey, how are you? I have a question. I guess at this point it's almost more procedural, just trying to get my arms around how you folks arrived at the 4 alternatives. An example would be alternative 3, the pipeline. Which agencies and experts were contacted, and what were their responses to this that were considered, you know, in the alternative selection? Things such as concerns or recommendations. What level of feedback did you get?
So the alternatives first started, there was a few studies done. One of it was done by Kleinschmidt back in 2017. There was also some work done within a technical advisory committee, and those reports and those committees framed basic alternatives for the district to look at and determine the feasibility. We did a feasibility analysis internally to determine which alternatives to go forward with a preparation of a draft EIR. The level of agencies really was just the TAC committee. We have not gone into formal consultation with any particular agency as we progress through this draft process. We were reaching out now for a public scoping meeting. We have provided notification at the office of, oh my goodness, I'm blanking, the state office. We provided notification so that that particular office can actually distribute to the different agencies so that they can review the alternatives and provide feedback to the district as we prepare this draft EIR.
So basically after the TAC, then that you have not worked more with, say, NIMS or Fish and Wildlife or anybody as far as honing your selection process or anything?
We've entered the CEQA process at this point.
Okay.
So with the CEQA process, that does engage the agencies for comment.
Correct. That's it at this point for me. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Ron. Okay, Beth Lawson.
Hi, can you hear me?
Hi. Yes.
Hi, my name is Beth Lawson from the California Department of Fish and Wildlife. And I just had a couple of questions about, we were active participants in that TAC process through the public grant that was done for some of the last phases of work. In large part was used to develop some background modeling and some of the infiltration gallery concepts that are here. And throughout that process, we've been submitting sort of questions and comments about fish screen criteria and the sediment transport study and how that could be used to inform future thought about how and where to place an infiltration gallery and how to think about the infiltration gallery and its effectiveness long term. Are the questions that we've already submitted going to be considered in your documentation going forward, or should we expect to resubmit the same comments that we've had on your infiltration gallery concepts in this NOP comment period?
You should resubmit them in our NOP comment period. With the grant project, I was under the understanding that we had satisfied comments received when we finalized the grant. So if you have outstanding concerns, please do submit them.
Okay, and similarly for the concepts or the comments that were submitted as a part of the TAC process about the infiltration gallery concepts, should we resubmit those comments?
Any comments that you made during the TAC meeting, yes. resubmit them.
Okay.
Thank you. Do you have any more comments, Beth, before we move on?
Not right now, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Steve Hubbard, I'm muting you.
Hi, thank you. Hey, I have a informational question related to the process. And I was wondering, at which stage of this process are you going to evaluate the fiscal impact of these various alternatives on the ratepayers of NID? That's my question.
So aside from the CEQA process, we are going to be doing an internal investigation of the cost for each of these projects. We will be reporting on that.
Thank you.
You're welcome. We have Jack Sanchez. I'm muting you. Oh, okay. Jack, if you could unmute yourself, please. Oh, where'd he go?
There you go. Okay. Yeah, hello. My name is Robert Hain, and I'm here with Jack Sanchez. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. One of the things that I would like to talk to you about is I actually live next to a project that was done with a 2-foot pipe. It was started back in 2011. It was approved by Gary King on 4/1/2011, and it's called the Mount Vernon Road Siphon Pipeline. Could I talk about that for a few minutes?
Will it?
It's directly.
Jack, just curious how it's relevant to this project. I guess if it's just a history of a previous project, I'm not sure it's relevant to the discussion tonight.
Well, I think it would be relevant because what it has to do is the failure of this 2-foot pipe that runs basically from Atwood Road to Mount Vernon and up the other side, and the ongoing problems that we've had with it since it's been installed, and the abandonment of part of that pipe to get water to box 1941, which we've been buying water from you guys for like 45 years. So if you don't want me to talk about it, we can talk about it later. I don't want it to be an embarrassment for anybody or infringe on anybody's capabilities, but in the actual drawings.
So yeah, Jack, I think that this is Robert. I'm sorry, this is Robert. Robert, so yeah, I would appreciate that we have this discussion at a different time and that we stick to the comments related to this project here. Appreciate it.
Wait a minute. This is feedback from the public. If you'll just have the courtesy to listen, you'll see how germane what Robert has to say is. So please listen.
Okay, so what I'd like to just mention, not going to discuss it.
It's a completely different project, and it's a siphon versus a pipeline. And again, I don't believe it's relevant to this project. So please,
it is relevant. If you just have the courtesy to listen to it.
Forget it. We'll get them.
It's totally ridiculous. This is a public input gathering. And this is totally germane to your pipeline. To the pipeline project, jeez.
I would recommend that you submit those as written comments, and we can take a look at it.
So you're refusing to listen to input from the public. What's the purpose of this meeting? To shut up the public and prevent input from the public that's germane to the pipeline? Is that your goal?
No, it is not. Do you have any specific comments to this project other than this other project that was completed a couple years ago by the district? We'd be happy to listen to it.
Okay, I do have. Okay, what I'd like to comment on is the fact that basically you're talking about putting in a 2-foot pipe, taking it down the road, drop an elevation of roughly 200 feet, It's not going to be fed by a pond. It's just going to be fed by whatever NID one, which would come down to your yard and then go underground in a pipe. So it's basically a pipe that is going to have Venturi effect. I know you guys are talking about selling water down the line. Venturi effects will not allow water to flow out of it, which I've witnessed. And so that's all I was trying to do, is make you aware of the fact that there might be an inherited problem that maybe board members or people senior in NID might not be aware of the problem of a pipeline. And so it is called a siphon, but it's identical to what you're talking about. So I just wanted to raise that point. And again, I would like to talk about the financial impact to ratepayers like myself. I've heard figures of $8 to $10 million to put this pipe in. And I consider that to be out of the ballpark when there's methods and analogies that can be studied to get fish over, stop entrainment, and to address the fact that you guys have been taking natural water out of Auburn Ravine for many years for free. And those things need to be addressed. And I guess that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Okay. James Hoffler, go ahead and unmute yourself, please.
There we go. I'm unmuted. And I had a question about the pipeline as well. I did see on one of the diagrams in the initial study, various parcels indicated with little dots that those could be potential new customers. If the pipeline was put along that particular route, there would be some potential for new customers along that route. So I'm thinking about the pipeline and how that would achieve the possibility of delivery to those customers. I was thinking, and this is really a question as to whether or not I'm thinking clearly, that I would assume, therefore, that the pipeline would be under pressure so that there could be service points along the pipeline where the pressure in the pipeline of the water would allow water to flow out to particular customers. Is that correct?
Well, yes, there would be some pressure in the pipeline.
Okay. Thank you very much. I had another question, and then I'll let somebody else ask a question. It has been documented that there are Pacific lamprey in Auburn Ravine. We've observed them and photographed them in both life stages, in their youth, you might say, and as older spawning adults. Will the passage designs accommodate Pacific lamprey?
I can't answer that right now. We'll have to investigate that in the document.
Thank you.
I do not see any hands raised at the moment. Oh, here we go.
Do you think it's sorry, and I just muted it.
Sure. Jim, go ahead and unmute yourself. Oh. Okay.
Yeah, I guess. Okay, I'll start over. So Jim Hoffman here, you can hear me now? Okay, very good. So regarding the pipeline, it's noted in the initial study that the pipeline would begin at the NID maintenance yard. I think it's near the intersection of Gold Hill and Fruitvale, right?
Yes.
So where does that water come from?
So we'll be looking at, and this is something that we'll figure out with final design, but where the water would be coming from is still Auburn Ravine. However, it's diverted up at what's called the Gold Hill diversion, and it goes into Auburn Ravine 1. So our canal system, Auburn Ravine 1.
So will that be part of the analysis, the impact on that particular canal, the maintenance of the canal, the ability of the canal to handle that much volume safely?
The analysis of Auburn Ravine 1 being able to handle it safely?
Yeah, because it's going to be increased flow there. So you have a potential maintenance issue and a safety issue.
We will talk about the increased flows in Auburn Ravine 1. We'll also talk about the decreased flows in Auburn Ravine Natural.
Gotcha. And then another question related to the pipeline and the intake there at Auburn Ravine 1, NID 1, Gold Hill Dam, as it's called. That increased flow into that diversion would probably have an impact on fish in that area that might be entrained into that diversion. Some already are. You know, you can observe fish in that canal frequently. With increased flow, that would potentially increase entrainment. Will NID be considering screening that particular intake because of that issue?
I can't answer that one. It's something that we could look at in the draft EIR as a potential impact.
Thank you. I'll be quiet for a second to see if anybody else has questions.
Okay. Okay, Steve Hubbard, you can go ahead and unmute yourself.
Hi, thank you. I had a quick question. Somewhere it referred to there's some uncertainty about the Hemphill Dam and its structural integrity, given its age and how it was constructed. And so I was wondering throughout this process, when and how are you going to evaluate that? You know, what's the soundness of the dam and what bearing that might have upon the eventual project? Thanks.
Yes, we currently have, eCorp has a subconsultant, NHC, that is going to be evaluating the dam. We are just in that early stages of that process right now, and we'll be reporting on that condition.
Thanks.
Okay. I can read those now, yeah. 2 more hands. Oh, 2 more hands, okay. Again. All right, so Beth Lawson, you can go ahead and unmute yourself.
Hi, just one more question. I just wanted to ask a little bit about some of the other alternatives that were considered during the TAC process. We sort of went back and forth about the option of using cone screens at this location. Many people are probably familiar with the cone screens that are down at Pleasant Grove. And we had kind of gone back and forth after a site visit to the location about whether or not there would be adequate depth and adequate sweeping velocities for a cone screen. I think we corrected the record that those sweeping velocities are not needed. But is this an alternative that was further looked at before you got to the NOP and has already been dismissed in consideration? Or is this the type of thing that we should be submitting in our comments for further consideration?
Please submit that in your comments for further consideration.
Okay, so was it already considered in preparation for this document?
So the work that was done in the TAC with my predecessor on this project, you mentioned that it was put into the record. I'm not sure what record you're referring to.
Oh, not the record, just that there was emails back and forth about it. There wasn't an official record.
Okay. Yeah, I would highly recommend if there was a potential project that was discussed in the TAC, please do indicate it in comments here with the scoping meeting. Email exchanges back and forth with my predecessor, it's outside of any project record that I am aware of, unfortunately.
Okay, thank you. That's helpful.
Tim, we're gonna go ahead and unmute yourself.
Okay, I'm unmuted. I had a question about the existing sewer pipe that runs from North Auburn through various pathways and also down Virginiatown Road. It actually crosses underneath Auburn Ravine, just maybe a couple hundred yards upstream from the Hemphill Dam. In reading the sediment study, I became concerned that possible reformation of the creek bed upstream from the existing dam might dig down kind of deep. So I would suggest that the E-Corp team and NID double check on that just to make sure how deep that existing sewer pipe is. We were told at one point that it was going to be bored through bedrock underneath the creek bed. And if that in fact was done, that's probably a pretty good sign. But if not, there might be some concern as to danger to that underground pipe. I'll take the silence. Okay, go ahead.
Thank you, yes.
Okay.
Yes, we did talk to Stantec about that crossing. I do have as-built. We will actively talk to the City of Lincoln.
Sounds good.
With regards to that crossing, yep.
Okay. And question about the pipeline crossing. In the presentation this afternoon, it was mentioned that the pipeline would cross overhead above Auburn Ravine. In the initial study, it also mentioned underground. Is underground still being considered?
Underground is still a consideration, yes.
Oh, okay. Thank you. I'll be quiet for a while.
Okay. Steve, we're going to go ahead. You can go ahead and unmute yourself. Oh, Steve, you're unmuted.
Yeah, I didn't get the unmute button. Can you hear me?
Okay. Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, great. I had a process-related question. And you said that you're going to look at the structural soundness of the current dam, and you'd be reporting on that. And I was wondering, is that reporting going to take place in the EIR documentation, or just how are you going to handle that reporting out to the public or to groups like us? Thanks.
It will be made public. I can't answer right now whether or not it'll be made public during the draft EIR process, or if we'll make the report public ahead of time. I'm not sure, honestly.
So if it were the latter case, then how would we go about ensuring that we're staying current with the information and the reports that you might publish on issues like this?
When they are finalized, we will release them to the public on the website.
Thank you.
Chris Schutz, you can unmute yourself.
I think I'm unmuted. Thank you. I have a comment and a recommendation. In the past, I think there has been a lot of concern expressed by NID and others regarding the regulatory framework in which this project would have to would be constructed and developed. I would recommend that you be very thorough and careful about describing the regulatory setting in your CEQA document. I think in the past there has been some concerns that may not have been as warranted as some people may have thought they were. And I think it would be helpful and instructive to the public and people reading these documents to get it to be very thorough and stepwise in your description of the regulatory setting. I will say that I'm hopeful that different entities are seeking to get this done and want to cooperate. I know that on the Lincoln Fish Passage project that was accomplished a number of years ago, in the end, there was a lot of regulatory cooperation that came together. And that's not to say that people won't do the things that they're supposed to do. But I think a good, solid description of the regulatory settings, and if there are any options or paths that would be more advantageous or more efficient, if you all can lay those out in your document, I think that would help everyone. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Jim, you can go ahead and unmute yourself.
Okay. Another question about the pipeline route. on one of the diagrams, one of the aerial maps with the pipeline route indicated on it, it looks like there's like a double line at a certain section of Virginiatown Road. So it kind of looks to me like there's really kind of like one route that's being considered with one possible alternative to the route along Virginiatown Road. But I didn't understand the meaning of that. It might be that one route would go in that section of Virginiatown Road would go down Virginiatown Road, like under the pavement, and the other one might go through nearby property. Do I have that right?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, thank you. I may have another question in a minute, but you can mute me now.
Okay. Star 9 or raise your hand if you'd like to make a comment. I'll take this opportunity right now to read some comments that was received from Laura Peters. First, on alternative 3, this alternative was investigated in the April 2016 Klein-Schmidt alternative analysis. See their conclusion below from page 20 of that report. 5.7, option 6, Lincoln Canal, Auburn Ravine 1 connection. Another option for providing water to the Hemphill Canal in the event of the removal of the diversion structure includes providing flow via a pipeline from nearby canals, such as the Lincoln Canal/Auburn Ravine 1. While simple on paper, an extensive study would be required to ensure that the adequate flow is available in the supply canal. Current demand for the Lincoln Canal indicates that it does not currently have sufficient capacity. Modifications to expand carrying capacity in the Lincoln Canal would be needed in order to consider this as a possible option. Construction of the pipeline and the required permitting could greatly increase costs, and these would also be major factors in assessing the viability. So questions from that: have the necessary studies have been completed to confirm this is a viable and feasible alternative? Second question, why wasn't this segment of the project necessary to get water to the NID Placer Yard included in the alternative 3 project description? Then she had a comment on the initial study, section 2-1. The last sentence regarding alternative 3 notes that, in quotes, so those parts of the pipeline west of Virginiatown Road are actually in the city, end quote. Virginiatown Road runs east to west. Do you mean west of Fowler Road? Please clarify. And we talked a little bit about this before the meeting, just to clarify that comment. Yes, Virginiatown Road does run east to west, but then it makes a turn going north to south. And so that area west is actually within the city of Lincoln. So that's, and hopefully with maps that we come out with in the future, that'll make that clear. 2-10, the second paragraph notes that historically, NID's goal is to keep the customer whole with modification projects such as these. Question, how does this alternative propose to provide access to the ravine to facilitate pump accounts for existing customers not adjacent to it? And that's something we'll look at in the draft DIR. 4-35, the first paragraph states that additionally implementation of alternative 3 would result in the diversion of creek water at NID's Placer Yard on Gold Hill Road. Note that the creek is not adjacent to NID's Placer Yard, thus it would not be direct diversion. Question 1, what is the purpose of the alignment? What is the proposed alignment from the creek to the Placer Yard? Question 2, the impacts at the diversion point as well as the selected alignment proposed to transport the water from the creek to the Placer Yard needs to be analyzed. So in the description earlier, we're going to be diverting the water not from the creek in the plaster yard, rather Auburn Ravine 1, most likely, in the plaster yard, if that project goes forward to design. The impacts to the version point, we said that we would look at that in the draft EIR during this meeting. If there's any other comments or questions, hey, James, you can go ahead and unmute yourself.
Okay. Yeah, I had a question about page 4-54. On that page, part of the Q&A, as part of the package, there's a statement made that telecommunication facilities would not be needed at that particular site. I would suggest that that be reconsidered because whatever change is made at that site to allow for fish passage, it would be a really good idea to have some way to count the fish. And modern fish passage technologies, similar to what we Friends of Auburn Ravine use in downtown Lincoln at the Lincoln Gauging Station, work best when you have a combination of AC power and telecommunication facilities. So I'd suggest that that be changed to include that capability at that site, so you can quantify the benefits of all the work you do. And I think I'll go on and make another couple of statements, all questions. Question on page 2-13, there's a list of agency approvals, and I didn't see Placer County flood control on the list. I think there was another flood control agency, but not Placer County. So I won't tell them they were left off, but I'd suggest that maybe they should be involved.
Okay, thank you.
And on page 2-14, of course, I know this was written some time ago. There's a statement about the Placer County Conservation Program, whether or not it was actually approved, but it has now been approved. So I think everybody's aware of that, but just for the record, we should note that that has been approved.
Right.
Also, you know, we at Friends of Auburn Ravine, we like to try to take care of the humans as well as the fish. So that caused us to think about some potential impacts to the golf course. One, of course, as you guys mentioned earlier, is the size of that staging area, which would be right next to the golf course, and the resultant noise and potentially dust and so forth. But then also, if any of the solutions involve a pump, there might be some noise from the pump. Of course, we know with like a self-cleaning conical screen, the pump is underwater and there's very little noise from that, but there might be other solutions that would involve noise for the golfers. And if there is an overhead bridge going across there, there might be a visual impact for the golf course, because one of the holes of the golf course is right near that Hemphill Canal. That's all I have for right now.
Okay, thank you. So, yep. Laura, we went. Go ahead and unmute yourself.
Thank you. Hi, this is Laura Peters. I didn't hear the answer to my first question about the studies that were in 2016. They wanted to make sure that we did studies to make sure this was a viable project, this alternative 3. I didn't hear the answers to questions 1 and 2 of my general questions.
So, alternative 3, you were talking specifically about Lincoln Canal. We did do an internal investigation on that one, and that's something that we'll talk about in the draft EIR of the alternatives not considered. We will cover that in the draft EIR. And let's see, why wasn't this segment of a project necessary to get? So Lincoln, can you please elaborate on your question number 2? Why wasn't this segment of the project necessary to get water to the NID plaster yard included in the alternative 3 project description? Are you talking about the Auburn Ravine 1 or Auburn Ravine Natural?
The Auburn Ravine one, in the 2016 document, they spoke about both either the Lincoln Canal or AR1. And they said, well, an extensive study would have to be required. Well, when in this particular initial study, it said the boundary of the project began at Placer Yard, but most of the impacts are at the diversion to get water out of the creek and to the Placer Yard, but that's not, seems to be part of the project description. And so I'm wondering why we didn't start at the beginning of the project. In order to meet the objective of the problem, we would need to get water into that pipeline that we're going to start from the Placer Yard.
So as part of the draft EIR, we will look at the impacts.
So you'll expand the boundary of the project, of that alternative, I mean?
Well, it's looking at the impacts to that project potentially causes. So yes, we'll investigate whatever impacts that we need to.
And I would just like to make sure that the project starts where the water starts. That's my point.
At gold. So we will investigate all the impacts, including impacts upstream of the actual physical construction of the project. So that means looking at impacts at the Gold Hill diversion.
And that should be included in the alternative boundary. That's my.
It'll be discussed. Yeah, it'll be discussed in the draft EIR.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Jim, you can unmute yourself.
Okay. I'm referring now to the sediment transport study done by Balance Hydraulics, Hydrologics, I should say. They mentioned in there that they didn't have access to year-round flow data, just because mainly Nevada Irrigation District keeps data on irrigation season flows, but not wintertime flows. I'd like to point out that the Lincoln wastewater treatment plant west of Lincoln does collect data all year long because they need that data for their mix ratios when they discharge water into Auburn Ravine down there west of Lincoln. So there's a good potential source of data there. Doesn't go back decades because that facility is not quite that old, but it would give some better information. That being said, the estimates that I saw in the sediment transport study looked to me to be pretty reasonable. They did a pretty good analysis of the catchment area, you might say, the area of the watershed that flows into Auburn Ravine, and took into account the rain events that we do have. We need to always remember that Auburn Ravine can go from 6 cubic feet per second at Lincoln up to 600 overnight. If you get 2 to 3 inches of rain in 2 to 3 days, it's going at least 600 CFS at Lincoln, which is very similar to what would be at Hemphill, just a mile and a half upstream. That's all for now.
Thank you. *9 or raise your hand function if you'd like to indicate a comment or question. Jim, can you unmute yourself?
The good news is I'm almost done. In reading the sediment study, they talked about various alternatives for how to deal with the sediment. And they talked about the idea of reducing the sill of the dam down 2 feet, maybe 5 feet, maybe first 2 feet, then 5 feet before eventual total removal, that sort of thing. They also talked about what they call sediment management, where they described the idea that they would actually dig a new channel for the creek upstream from the dam, removing 8,000 cubic feet of material so as to produce a new smooth, continuous, gentle slope all the way from the upstream end of that new channel down to the Hemphill Dam. That has some charm to it, obviously a very expensive option. But one of the good things about that is it avoids a situation you get sometimes when you remove a dam and there's a whole bunch of sediment. You get a situation where over a period of time there's a break, what I call the Niagara Falls problem, where you get a drop as the creek eats away at that sediment. You'll have a precipitous point where it's almost like a 90-degree angle where the creek goes over, falls down 4 or 5 feet, in this case, maybe a little bit more, and then proceeds on downstream. And then gradually that break point moves upstream as the creek eats away the sediment. So that's something I think should be considered. The sediment study didn't talk about fish passage. They said that right up front. But some of the sediment, some of the design alternatives would result in potential sediment behavior that could create a new fish passage impediment for some period of years upstream from the dam as that break point moves back upstream until the channel is totally reformed. So just a suggestion there for something to consider.
Yes, thank you. I'm not sure what she's referring to for that question. Yeah,
If there's something that we need to have them answer, we'd be happy to, but so far I haven't seen any that requires that. Maybe explain a little bit about how we'll move forward, I guess, at this point.
in terms of wrapping up the,
Yeah, that,
Yeah.
I mean, is this, are we gonna continue to stay online until 6
until
o'clock?
6 o'clock, yes. We are going to be available online until 6 p.m., the duration of the scoping meeting, for your questions and your comments. We will, for folks that may have joined us and missed the presentation, we'll start that again. If there's not, everybody's been, okay, all right. Okay.
I may have one person,
Oh, okay.
maybe one that came in.
Okay, so yeah, we'll restart the presentation here in 5 minutes. But we're here to take any comments that you may have. The whole purpose of the scoping meeting is to help us really flush out a potential project, the potential impacts, and develop a document that is going to address concerns. Gary, yeah, Gary, you can go ahead and unmute yourself, Gary.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
The question that I'd kind of like to get answered that maybe may not be applicable, but is there data available, or will there be data available applicable to how many new customers you'd have to acquire along that pipeline to justify that expense? And what efforts are being put out forward to market to get confirmation from individuals that genuinely want water service? I look at it, cost and return, and how long does it take to recapture? I know in Penn Valley, they've got a water system that I think a hookup fee approaches almost 30 grand. So how are these people going to reimburse for the installation of?
I'm sorry, we lost the last half of your question, Gary.
I wonder what the last half is.
Well, yeah, we heard about 30 grand, and how are folks gonna?
Right, but did you hear, I made a comment about Penn Valley.
Yes, we heard the comment about Penn Valley folks being charged 30 grand.
So I guess the question kind of would be, is what kind of reimbursement's going to be set up to compensate NID and the ratepayers for the installation of a $6 to $8 million pipeline?
Okay, that's something we could look into. That's not a question we can address right now.
Right, but I would like it to be looked into, because if you can't afford to do it, it shouldn't even be a consideration.
Yes, understood. And part of separate from the CEQA process, we are going to be doing an investigation of the potential costs for each alternative. And
Okay.
we will be reporting on that.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Jim, you can go ahead and unmute yourself.
Okay. Yeah, I think I might have misspoke when I was talking about the sediment transport management plan where the new channel would be dug upstream from the dam. I think I said 8,000 cubic feet. I meant to say 8,000 cubic yards. Okay. So just wanted to correct myself on that. And then another thing in the sediment transport model, where was, oh, shoot, I lost my notes now. I think I got to put you back on hold for a second while I get that particular item back in my head here.
Okay, no worries.
Okay.
So we'll go ahead and Jack Sanchez, you know, unmute yourself, please.
Okay, there are two things that I wondered if you've considered. In one, Auburn Ravine, when you take this large amount of water out and put it in a pipe, no aquatic life can survive in a pipe. And there should be some relationship established by NID to cover that. And secondly, when you take water out of the Auburn Ravine and send it down pipe, what you're doing is minimizing the groundwater recharge for which Camp Far West Dam was built because of the necessity to increase the groundwater recharge in the Sacramento Valley. Has NID considered either of these, or do you have plans to consider the effect of the pipeline on aquatic life and the weakening of groundwater recharge?
A lot of your question broke up a little bit there. I understood it to be, are we going to look at the impact to aquatic life by putting water into a pipeline? And then if we were going to look at groundwater recharge?
Yes.
Yeah, we'll investigate the impacts in the draft document. If I misunderstood your question, please definitely submit it with writing because I had a bunch of feedback.
Still unmuted if you want to keep talking.
You're still unmuted. You can continue, Jack.
No, you understand. No, you understand correctly. I'm just concerned about the effect of aquatic life by taking so much water out of the Auburn Ravine. No aquatic animal can live in a pipe. And secondly, I want to know what water and putting it in a pipe, taking out of the Auburn Ravine, what's the impact on groundwater recharge? Those are the two questions, and I think you have those pretty clear.
Okay, great. Thank you. Okay,
Thank you.
Jim, you can go unmute yourself.
Funny, it just took a while for that to show up on the screen so I could do that. But just two items. The public review period mentioned in the notice of preparation that we got, the 2-page document, said September 3rd through October 2nd, but then I think I heard you say through October 5th today, so I wanted to make sure which one it was.
It's October 5th, Monday.
Okay, very good. And then the other thing regarding the potential decommissioning of the Hemphill Canal, of course, in that diagram that you showed earlier, the Hemphill Canal goes from Hemphill Dam, out across what's now called Village 1 within the city of Lincoln, and then eventually gets over towards Sun City Lincoln Hills where it goes underground. But then it does come up above ground and actually flows into Orchard Creek. And Orchard Creek flows out near the casino, the Thunder Valley Casino, and serves the Black Angus rancher out there. Another thing about Orchard Creek is that when the casino was put in, there were special provisions made to provide nesting sites for a particular type of swallow. So if the water into Orchard Creek was reduced dramatically by decommissioning the canal, that might have an impact on the swallows as well. So just something to watch out for on that particular alternative. Thank you very much for your time today.
Thank you. Okay. Did we want to run through the presentation one more time for the folks? Chris?
Be happy to do that.
Okay.
One more time. How about that? There we go. All right.
Thank you.
There we go. Why is it not wanting to go to the very beginning? Oh, it's the very end. Okay, close your eyes or you get dizzy. Nobody knows.
Okay.
There we go.
All right. Thank you. Okay, you can probably advance to the third slide. Yeah, there we go.
Perfect. You want me to move ahead to the alternative?
Chris, take it away.
I'll go ahead and run through it again. Once again, very encouraged to have so much participation, so we really appreciate you taking the time to join us today to help us understand concerns that you have about this potential project. Once again, our purpose of the meeting tonight is to provide some background information on the purpose and need for this project. Also to describe the proposed project alternatives that are going to be considered in the EIR. I will note also, just based on some of the comments received, that we will be describing a full range of alternatives that were considered and describing why they haven't been considered further. So there'll be a robust discussion of alternatives, narrowing down to the ones that are being evaluated in the EIR. And also, I think it's worth noting that the project description that'll be supporting the EIR will be more detailed, more robust, and some of the concerns and issues raised today will be incorporated into that document to make sure that it covers all potential issues. The third purpose is to explain the environmental review process and how we're proceeding with the project. And then finally, the most important is to get your input on the potential scope and content of the EIR. So here is the environmental review process. We circulated a notice of preparation and initial study on September 3rd. We're having this public scoping meeting to accept comment today. And the close of the NIP period is on October 5th. We put it on Monday, so it wouldn't end on the weekend to give people a little more time. We will be, we're focused on getting this document ready for review and comment at a target of April 2021. It'll be out for public review for at least 45 days. And we will have a public meeting during that draft EIR to accept additional public comment on the project. Following the end of the comment period, we'll be preparing written responses to comments on the draft EIR and putting together a final EIR, which will include a mitigation monitoring and reporting plan for certification by the Nevada Irrigation District Board, and in support of considering or adopting preferred alternative. Go ahead. If we have anyone new on the call, you can provide comments right here in the meeting. You can hit the raise your hand function or press *9 to notify us that you'd like to provide additional comment. And you can also provide written comments via email or mail to Nevada Irrigation District, which we have an address that will be provided at the end of the presentation. Okay. All right, just an overview project location. Hemphill diversion is located on Auburn Ravine, northeast of the city of Lincoln. The structure diverts water from Auburn Ravine into Hemphill Canal, located south of the ravine for delivery to NID raw water customers. Go ahead. A little background on the diversion. It's been operated by NID since it was purchased in 1933. The diversion structure is concrete and approximately 8 feet high. It has approximately a 40-foot long concrete apron extending downstream. During irrigation season, which is typically mid-April through mid-October, the district places 3-foot flashboards on top of the structure to divert flows into Hemphill Canal, which is located just upstream of the diversion structure along the south bank of Auburn Ravine. Auburn Ravine, upstream of Hemphill diversion, is a salmonid stream and provides salmonid habitat. And the structure has historically been identified as a barrier to fish passage. The district proposes to eliminate this barrier by either removing the structure or constructing a fish passage facility around the structure while continuing to provide service. With that in mind, NID is considering 4 alternatives to achieve this goal. Go to the next one. The 4 alternatives being considered are riverbank infiltration gallery alternative, a fish passage alternative, a pipeline alternative, and potential abandonment of the Hemphill Canal as an alternative. Alternatives 1, 3, and 4 include removal of the diversion. Alternative 2 includes modification of the diversion. The alternatives vary as far as construction attributes and areas of potential disturbance, which I'll go into a little more detail about as we continue through this presentation. All of these alternatives are designed to allow for fish passage beyond Hemphill diversion structure on Auburn Ravine. The first alternative is the riverbank infiltration gallery alternative. This would involve removing the Hemphill diversion structure and constructing an infiltration gallery within the north or south bank of Auburn Ravine to facilitate continued water deliveries to Hemphill Canal. The gallery would be located approximately 75 feet downstream of the existing diversion structure. And there's a little more detail provided in the initial study with regard to the design of this facility. Alternative 2 includes the fish passage alternative, which would install a fish ladder within Auburn Ravine. As noted, there was a feasibility analysis of several approaches completed by Placer County in 2009. They considered 4 alternatives. Of the 4 alternatives, 2 provided year-round passage for fish, either a bypass or a 2-stage fish ladder. As Auburn Ravine is identified for both fall run salmon and steelhead, selection of one of the 2 year-round passages would improve anadromous fish migration conditions. The 2-stage fish ladder is considered more desirable as it does not significantly increase the footprint of NID's operation. Due to the existing condition of the diversion structure, it is possible that the existing Hemphill diversion structure may need replacement or modification to construct a viable fish ladder facility. And as we noted previously, ECOR's subconsultant NHC is doing some additional feasibility analysis of previous studies that have been done and looking at the diversion itself for its condition to help inform the EIR and expand the project description that will be included in the EIR. The next shows a graphic of the general project area. I think it's worth noting that this area of potential effect, there isn't going to be significant construction with this in this area, but it's a little broader area of potential effect just to make sure we capture access, potential staging areas, and any other improvements that might need to be completed to implement the project. So just so you know, it's not all going to be modified or graded or anything, but just provide us a broader area that we can make sure we cover all issues. As you can see, the infiltration gallery and fish ladder are shown, approximate location are shown on the graphic as well. All right. Alternative 3 is the pipeline alternative. Pipeline alternative would remove the existing diversion structure and construct an underground pipeline extending from existing NID facilities on Gold Hill Road to Hemphill Canal. The alternative would install 24-inch raw water pipeline in Fruitvale Road, Fowler Road, and Virginiatown Road right-of-way. And this alternative would also construct an above-ground stream crossing downstream and west of the existing diversion. One commenter earlier noted that there was discussion of a below-stream crossing as well, and I believe that will be analyzed in the document. It's also worth noting that there are a number of potential staging areas that are being considered along the alignment. One has not been selected this time, but as part of the effort, ECOR is evaluating constraints on individual parcels along the alignment that could serve as a staging area. That'll be further fleshed out in the EIR. Under this alternative, water would be diverted at actually NID's Auburn 1 diversion, and then would be piped from the Gold Hill maintenance yard to the Hemphill diversion as described above. As noted by a couple of callers as well, this would result in decreased flows in Auburn Ravine from the Auburn 1 diversion to the Hemphill diversion during the irrigation system, and impacts on both the conveyance from the Auburn 1 diversion to the Gold Hill facility, the Placer Yard, and decreased flows in Auburn Ravine from that diversion down to Hemphill diversion will be considered in the IR. Okay. This shows the pipeline alignment and also shows some of the sites that are being considered as potential staging areas along that pipeline alignment. All right. Finally, alternative 4, abandonment of Hemphill Canal. Abandonment alternative would remove the diversion structure and decommission Hemphill Canal. This alternative would abandon the canal, and the canal would be filled with soil if desired by adjacent property owners. The fill would extend from Auburn Ravine to SR 193. South of SR 193, the canal is undergrounded, so no leveling of the canal is required beyond that point. We will be considering any flows at the end and ultimately discharge to Orchard Creek and what kind of changes might occur under this alternative. During the preparation of the draft EIR, we will be evaluating and considering other alternatives for raw water delivery. That will be part of the analysis to keep the existing water rights holders of the water users along the canal, allow them to have service. Additionally, this alternative will impact reduced flows into Auburn Ravine during irrigation system, or actually the flows may be reduced in Auburn Ravine during the irrigation system. So we will be considering those impacts as well. And the next graphic shows the approximate alignment of the canal down to SR 193 and includes the area around the diversion where some improvement work and removal would occur. Okay. Just kind of on a high level, but we're going to be considering everything. Construction related impacts, a number of them were raised today. Air quality, cultural resources, biological resources, paleontological resources, greenhouse gas emissions, noise, and tribal resources are issues that are anticipated to be impacted by construction and implementation of the 4 alternatives that will be considered in detail in the EIR. In addition, long-term issues related to biological resource impacts within the ravine itself during operations of whichever alternative is selected will be considered, along with hydrology and water quality implications and implications to water supply, including any potential impacts to groundwater associated with changes in flows in Auburn Ravine. And finally, we have 2 options for you to provide additional comment. You can either mail your comments to the address listed, or you can email your comments. And with that, we will open it back up for additional comment if anybody has any additional comments or questions they'd like to raise.
So raise your hand or *9 for a question or a comment? The presentation has been made available under the project documents. This meeting here will also be available on our website on the meeting and minutes page under committees, other committees. Miscellaneous? Okay.
Do we have an idea when we think we'll have those posted?
So
Yeah.
the video tomorrow. The presentation should currently be posted though, but yeah.
But the meeting, this
recording.
Zoom meeting recording will be available probably by tomorrow? By end of day tomorrow? Yeah. We're here till 6 o'clock, so if anybody has any questions between now and then, otherwise it might be just kind of a lot of silence for the next few minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's 5:31.
Get home,
Right.
5:30.
Yeah, we want to make sure we stay till 6 because we said we'd be here till 6.
Yeah.
There you go.
Okay. Jim, you can go ahead and unmute yourself.
Yeah, I just had a little bit of good news to report. You know, we operate our one overhead camera and 3 underwater cameras in Auburn Ravine right near downtown Lincoln. In fact, at the Lincoln Engaging Station. Thank you very much to NID for letting us do that since the fall of 2016. And we have the good news to report that for the 2019-2020 season, in other words, October 2019 through April 2020, we've so far counted over 60 fall run Chinook salmon right there going through Lincoln. So that's a pretty good number. That matches up with some numbers we've had in some years over the past 6 or 8 years. It's a little low compared to our top year. Our top year was the 16-17 season when we had 302 come through Lincoln. There was another year when it was about 200. That's based on a Cal Fish and Wildlife estimate based on counting reds. And then we had some other years. One was like 25, a couple of years around 60. So we're pretty happy really that we got 60 this season, because if you count back 4 years, that was the middle of the drought. Bad ocean conditions, bad river conditions. Here we are 4 years later with pretty good returns at the midpoint of the typical life cycle, anywhere from 3 to 5 years. And we'll be putting the salmon cameras back in the creek on October 15 and hoping for a lot of rain this season.
Cool.
End of report.
Thank you. Gary, you can go ahead and unmute yourself.
I want to thank you all for hosting this meeting. I'm going to go ahead and leave. Thank you. Have a good evening.
Thanks.
Thank you. You too.
Going.
is that a new Q&A on the bottom? Well, we need to have the anonymous attendee identify themselves, please. So we received a comment through our question and answer. This is a public scoping meeting. We're trying to thank you, Timor. So the question is, why is part of the considered pipeline along Virginia Town Road on private property? Will the reduced flows affect the current user farms? Will agricultural impacts be considered in the EIR? So can you keep that open? Sorry. So the first question, why is the part of the considered pipeline along Virginia Town Road on private property? That's something that we wanted to explore for the purposes of cost savings. Generally, it's more cost effective to construct in the dirt because we don't have the pavement restoration required in pavement. Let's see. The next question, will the reduced flows affect the current user farms? I believe you're talking about for alternative 4. If we eliminated the service, we will investigate that impact in the draft EIR. If that's not your question, please expand on it so we can capture that in the draft EIR. And then will agricultural impacts be considered in the draft EIR? Yes, we will be looking at all those particular. Am I on the wrong track here? I mean, we do look at all the potential impacts.
Can I speak to that?
Yes, please do, Mike. Am I on the wrong track?
Yeah, the environmental or agricultural impacts were actually all considered less than significant in the initial study. However, if people do think that's wrong, they can make comments on it. And we can reevaluate it in the or if they choose if it's that way. So.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that.
So the consultants actually do get to talk once in a while. So.
Yes.
Close that door.
Yes, thank you. I believe it did. I mean, as Mike indicated, if they feel like we should be looking at the agricultural impact, they need to comment on that because in the initial study we determined there was less than significant. Is that little bar hiding, or does it only come up when there's
When I have our,
okay.
we don't really do Q&A.
Yes,
So,
yeah. Okay.
I don't know if it shows or how it looks.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it could be, just for folks that are remaining on the line, obviously we're going to post the entire meeting on our website, and maybe what we can do is put a little, what am I thinking of?
Summary?
A little summary of comments and questions. And so while you are more than welcome to stay on the line for the next 20 minutes, we can put a little something on the website So if you do receive any comments or questions between now and 6 o'clock, you'll know that, so you'll be able to view that on the, online on the document. So, but again, you're welcome to stay on the line, but we'll try to identify anybody that comes in the next 20 minutes. So if you have other things you can do, you won't necessarily have to sit through half an hour's worth of quiet time. You'll be able to know that there's some comments between now and 6.
Also, one other thing to note is we do actually address or summarize comments made during the scoping meeting in the EAR, so they'll be in there as well.
Looks like we have another Q&A, two more Q&A. So, just to cover, for the consideration of agricultural impacts, those were covered in the initial study. As Mike had indicated, those were considered less than significant. So we will not be considering them further in the draft EIR unless the public comments and says we missed something.
Yeah, you might want to expand a little bit too, and maybe Ecor could help with this.
Yes.
With regards to the ag component, right? Whether the less than significant for agricultural was specific to the folks on the Hemphill, or just in our service area in general to the impacts, right? Because clearly existing customers, other than those particularly on Hemphill, would not be affected or impacted by anything that we do. So those that have received water will continue to receive water regardless of the alternative that we choose.
Yeah, I could expand on that. So CEQA requires you to answer certain questions as part of the what they call guidelines for CEQA review, and those are based on the type of agricultural land that a project may be developed on. And there's only 3 different categories. One is that's actually supposed to be considered significant impacts. That is they're called one's prime farmland, which is very good farmland, basically. Unique farmland or farmland of statewide significance or importance. And so what you have to do is you have to analyze a project, how your project may affect those particular types of farmlands. If you have grazing land or lands that's not within those categories, it's not considered a significant impact. In this case, none of the sites that the pipeline or the other alternatives go through are considered prime farmland, unique farmland, or farmland of statewide significance or importance. So that's why they're all considered less than significant as far as that's concerned. There are other categories as well. Is the land going to affect a Williams Snack parcel, a contract parcel, which in this case none of them do because there's none located adjacent to it, or the addition of a pipeline and a roadway doesn't actually affect a Williams Snack contract land. So that's considered less than significant as well. Another one is, will it affect existing zoning that's for lands that are zoned for either forest land or agricultural land, and the addition of a pipeline will not affect any of that. The removal of diversion structure would not affect that as well because it doesn't exist, it doesn't affect the zoning on that land. You can still use that land for ag land or forest lands basically. And let's see, the last one was the result in the conversion of forest land like it is agricultural land. Well, there is no identified forest land, zoned forest land within the project areas or the alternative areas. So that's also, actually that's no impact in that case. And the last one is, will the changes due to the location result in conversion of farmland to non-agricultural land? And in this case, that's not the case either. The removal of the diversion dam or or inclusion of a pipeline will not result in a conversion of ag land to some other use. So that's why they're all considered either less than significant or having no impact at all on agricultural land. But like we said before, if you disagree with this, you can certainly write a comment in there, or we can expand on it in the EIR if necessary.
And
To expand on that a bit, Mike, too, that the issues that you were just talking about largely relate to a project's effect on the conversion of prime ag land, direct conversion through the creation or construction of a project. I think the issue that the commenter was referring to is, will the effect of the project on water supply delivered to existing customers result in a loss of the use of existing farmland? And that's kind of a separate issue in terms of water supply, and we will be looking at the impact of the project on water supply, and that could affect agricultural users as well.
Can we go back to the questions? Yeah, that first one. We received the Q&A I'd like to read. It's nice to know that a sixth-generation farm, 108-year-old agricultural business, and the largest ag producer of Placer County is less than significant. And yeah, can the person that made that anonymous comment please identify yourself for the record? Okay, can we go to the other remaining Q&A? Thank you. From Ricky, did I understand the consultant to say the impacts to the ag/raw water were not part of the draft EIR unless someone asked that to be included? Seems like it should be included. I think Mike probably addressed that in your summary, Ricky. If not, please let me know.
Yeah, with the clarification from Rick as well, that we are considering, you know, potential impacts on water supply that may impact agricultural uses. That is included in the scope of the EIR as currently proposed.
And I believe it looks like maybe D. Moore made that comment regarding the 108-year property. They also expanded to say you might want to actually talk to a farmer to discuss what the land is used for. Look into crop rotation. I believe we responded to all. Well, the two comments we're taking as comments from D. Moore, but the other two, the one from Laura about confirming the ag impacts, we responded to, and I believe we also responded to the one from Ricky.
And if there's something we're missing, there's a direct impact that we're not aware of, you know, please bring it to our attention. That's the whole purpose of the scoping process, is to make sure we cover all the bases. So we appreciate the input.
Okay, Jim, do you want to go ahead and unmute yourself?
Unmuted. Yeah, one of those questions prompted me to ask something I think I know, but I wanted to double check with you guys. I think this project will have some effect on how and where, could have impact on how and where Nevada Irrigation District delivers water, but it would not have an impact on how and where PCWA delivers water. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. And it's my understanding that Nevada Irrigation District, at the present time, at least for the last few years, doesn't deliver any water via Auburn Ravine downstream from Hemphill Dam. Is that correct?
Yeah, Auburn Ravine Natural downstream of Hemphill. I don't know that I can.
I'm not aware of any, but we'll follow up and look into that and make sure we include that in the comment. But
yeah, so I'm pretty sure that it's entirely PCWA water anywhere west of Hemphill Dam, downstream of Hemphill Dam. That water that's delivered to farmers and ranchers down there comes from PCWA. And nothing on this discussion relates to PCWA changing their plans. They may have some plans to make some changes, but I sure haven't heard of them.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, from D. Moore, you're missing speaking with the farmer. You can call Fowler Nurseries and ask for D. Moore to discuss. I would be more than happy to tell you about our less than significant operation. We will definitely contact you. We're not trying to trivialize your operation at all. When we talk about, and perhaps the consultant can actually better address this, when we talk about constructing projects and the impacts to, we're looking at the impacts of our construction and our project to these particular checklist items through the IS or through the initial study. It's not to say that your operation is less than significant. It's that our particular project would not have an effect or less than significant effect on that particular identified checklist item.
That's absolutely correct. We are not saying the farm is less than significant. We're saying the project has a less than significant impact on agricultural land in the area, basically. And as far as water is concerned, we do look at water supply, like Rick said, and how it will affect any agricultural land that the water is being supplied to currently. And if it does have an effect, that's going to be a water supply effect, not an agricultural effect.
We have another Q&A comment from Laura Peters. How will the pipeline alternative affect future groundwater replenishment as part of the West Placer as a participant, thank you, in the West Placer GSA? And that's something we can take a look at in the draft EIR.
That would be
groundwater recharge is looked at under hydrology, which is a full section in the EIR. It will look at that as well as not just stream flow, but also groundwater recharge, and in the water supply area, we'll look at groundwater use as well, because if these Hemphill Dam or canal users no longer get water from that, we have to determine where they're going to possibly get water from, and a lot of it could be from groundwater. So we'll look at that as well.
Okay, Jim, go ahead and unmute yourself. Okay, go ahead, Jim.
Okay, you can hear me now?
Yes.
Very good. So regarding the water diversion at Hemphill Dam, as it presently stands, that water flows into the Hemphill Canal and serves various customers along that canal. Lincoln Crossing Community Association, a couple of golf courses, the Black Angus farmer out there by the casino, maybe some other folks I'm unaware of. Upstream from there, upstream from Hemphill Dam, is where Fowler Nurseries is. So I would think that NID would still have the option to continue to send enough water down Auburn Ravine to where Fowler Nursery, right by Fowler Road, where they are, so they still could get their water. Is that correct?
Well,
I don't know, Jim, what the Fowler Nursery, where they receive their water, because there's also a canal that runs through portions of their property. So I can't specifically answer to that as to where they get their water, but obviously that water that would be delivered to them, should they be taking it from Auburn Ravine, would be taken prior to the Hemphill diversion. So I would assume that that water would continue to flow to them if they have some type of account in the ravine itself.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. I think we have a new attendee. If you'd like to make a comment, please use the raise your hand function or the *9.
Maybe iterate again, it's going to be on the website.
Yes, so the presentation that we showed today is located on our website under the Hemphill Diversion Project in the project documents.
And that this meeting,
This meeting here will also be made available by the end of the day tomorrow. That will be under our other meeting section, meeting and minutes. Thank you. Oh, looks like we have another Q&A down there. Okay, from Tony Frazee.
Yeah.
Hi, do you know if the raw water flow in Hemphill Canal that goes through 193 and Village 1 will be changed at all, or should we assume the same flow will continue after this is constructed? So the Hemphill master plan flow, the Hemphill Canal master plan flow will not change as a result of this project.
I think he's talking about alternative 4, right? So
Oh,
these alternatives, are they going to affect water service for our Hemphill Canal customers?
Yes.
Is what he's asking.
So if you're talking about alternative 4, the abandonment of the canal, it does have the potential to affect the customers. We have to investigate alternative ways to supply raw water to our customers.
The other alternatives that are proposed would continue to make deliveries to our existing customers on the Hemphill Canal.
Laura, you can unmute yourself, please.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hey, I just want to thank all of you for your diligence and persistence and hard work. This is a good project. We just have to get across the finish line. And so I do appreciate your work and thank you for holding this meeting.
Thank you.
Thanks, Laura.
I'm going to sign off now.
Okay. Thank you.
We got about 2 minutes left.
Yeah, we have about 2 minutes until 6. Would you mind, Chris, putting the last page up? You can still submit comments with the scoping meeting through October 5th. Here's our contact information for any and all written comments. Oh, what time it is disappeared. Can you check to make sure nobody else is raising their hand, please? Thank you. We'll also be posting a summary of the comments and questions received on our website as well.
like at 6 o'clock.
All right. Thank you all for attending.
Thank you.
We're signing off now.
Have a great night.
Have a good one.
Thanks.